Thank you for watching Tomorrow's America. Please like and share this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a huge show for you today. Tons of news going on. I want to get into it, and I'm going to start with just blasting through a bunch of low-hanging fruit, small-scale news. And then I'm going to get into NATO attacking Russian airplanes, the SPLC being indicted, Alex Jones and the Onion and that whole thing that's going on. A couple of investigations into Ilhan Omar and a little bit more. So I got a lot for you today, a lot of videos and a lot to talk about. Like I said, before we get into all that, please like and share this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and share this with everyone you know, because this is super important information for people to know, because things are going on. You can see I got this map of Asia up here, and basically there's a canal in in near Egypt here, the Suez Canal, that's being threatened to be closed. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. You got the Strait of Malacca, the Taiwanese Strait, all these different trade routes that are being threatened right now. Massive global shortages of oil, all sorts of things going on. This is going to have an effect on us come probably fall time, maybe next spring, when this year's growing crops become the food supply. We're still on last year's crops. So the Strait of Hormuz being closed hasn't really affected us. And we're still kind of on oil from the Gulf, right here, the Arabian Sea, the Gulf states, Iran, those countries. We're still on oil from pre-Strait of Hormuz closure. So we haven't really felt any of the effects. This is going to have effects, and the longer it goes on between Israel and the U.S. against Iran, the more of an effect it will have. All that to say, please share this video with people because it's super important information. And, I'm not really going to talk about the U.S.-Iran war today because essentially, I mean, what am I going to say? The strait's closed. We're doing peace talks. They bombed a ship. We sunk their navy. Oh, wait, their navy, hit some of our ships or whatever. So, not much to report on. That would be anything of useful information. And realistically, I'm kind of sick of talking about it. This was a conflict that they said would last a few days. The people of Iran are going to rise up and take back their government. None of it happened, and it shouldn't have happened. And yeah, so I'm taking the day off from talking about Iran because it's really just more irritating than educational at this point. Okay, so for the news blitz here, David Albert Scott. He's a Democrat from Georgia's 13th district. He passed away. Our hearts go out to his family, and it's unfortunate. He was older. I think he was 80, and that is unfortunate, but okay, so Kash Patel's nightclub lawsuit. Kash Patel dismissed, or Kash Patel was trying to sue, and basically a Houston federal court judge on Tuesday dismissed a lawsuit by FBI Director Kash Patel alleging that former FBI official Frank Figliuzzi defamed him by saying Patel last year had been visible at nightclubs for more than he had been on the seventh floor of the Bureau's headquarters in Washington, D.C. Uh, Pretty big deal. Obviously, Kash Patel, he's been involved in a lot of lawsuits lately. Him and his superstar country, world renowned country musician wife. She is amazing, and she's not affiliated with Mossad. We know that they sued over that. They sued over all kinds of things, and it just looks unprofessional when he's the director of the FBI. Some small scale person says something about him. He's got to, try and take down their whole business, their whole media operation. And it's happened a lot over the past, year since Kash Patel's been running the FBI. And I don't know. It's just pathetic to me. So, not even like judging off the story or who was right and who was wrong, which obviously Kash Patel must have been wrong for a judge to dismiss the case. But anyway, it's just unprofessional. You never heard of a FBI director being involved in just lawsuits based on stupid stuff. Oh yeah, he was in a lot of nightclubs, this year. Which Kash Patel, we've seen him, flying all over, going to the UFC and partying and going to all of his girlfriends' concerts. He doesn't miss a concert. I think he said. So Kash Patel, he is not able to sue this time, but okay, this right here is the Senate budget debate. So the Senate is debating on this year's budget, and basically they passed the budget resolution, which Budget Chair Lindsey Graham unveiled earlier Tuesday. So they passed it in a 52-46 vote, and it is expected to give the final measure final approval this week before leaving town. So I don't know what that means. Maybe Congress is out of session or whatever, but they are going to vote on the budget before the session ends, or for whatever reason they're leaving town. This one here is kind of interesting, and I kind of got a little question in my head. Once I go through the article and get to the other side of it, I'm going to ask this question because I don't think it's a question that's asked often enough, and a lot of people overlook these types of things, and I think that there needs to be more accountability. So, what you're seeing here is Democrat Representative Sheila Sherfilius McCormick. She was caught stealing $5 million from FEMA funds. The Ethics Committee was considering recommending that House expel Florida's Sherfilius McCormick over allegations she had denied that she stole federal funds. So right before they were able to expel her, this woman you're seeing here, right before they were able to expel her from Congress, she resigned, which is an obvious show of guilt. And, to me, if you're accused of stealing $5 million, right? Take this down. If you're accused of stealing $5 million from the federal government, which is a lot of money, and it says specifically that she was stealing the money for luxury items for herself, not to start a business or not to, I don't know, but she was just buying herself luxury items. Is the sorry, is the allegation. Um, she was buying herself luxury items, and she was stealing from a FEMA fund, if these allegations are true. And now, so she's gonna resign, and that's going to be her punishment. That's my question. Is the resignation her punishment? Because if I stole $2,000 in, let's say I said I had a kid, and I don't have any kids, but let's say I said I had a kid on my tax forms so I could get the child tax credit, right? So I fill that in, I get the child tax credit. Now I stole $2,000. About 6 months later, I get a letter in the mail saying, "Hey, you filed wrong in 2024. You have 10 days to make this right. Please, email, whatever." Let's say I did that. I would be in more serious trouble than apparently Sheila Sherfilius McCormick for stealing $5 million from the FEMA fund. And we see it over and over again. These people, all right, so some of them are sexually harassing in the workplace. They get fired. Some of them are doing this. Some of them are doing that. And there's all kinds of fraud. There's all kinds of stealing going on. I'm going to get into Ilhan Omar a little later. But there's all kinds of stuff going on. And you don't see anybody being held accountable. Which I find just ridiculous, because this is my tax money. This comes out of my paycheck every week, and then it gets distributed to all these different, NGOs and spread out all over the place. And these people are able to find their little workarounds and steal, skimp a little bit off the top here and there. They think, hey, no big deal. Well, guess what? That is my tax money that I pay every single week, and she just thinks she can go on and stick her little hand in the cookie jar and take what she wants. Okay, moving on. Migrant caravan, but many are no longer aiming for the US border. So apparently there's a massive migrant caravan in Mexico, and there was tons of caravans coming, just like the one you see in this picture, coming to America during the Biden administration, and they were coming over in droves. And when Trump got in office, the border was shut down, to Trump's credit, which I've been very critical about Trump lately. And I've been on his case about this war, and I really disagree with it. But, the border being shut down is a big positive. It's something great Trump did. And we're seeing the result of it here. These migrants were intending on coming to America once Trump shut down the border. And these people, a lot of them are Haitian. Once Trump shut down the border, well, now they're bouncing around Mexico trying to find somewhere, because essentially they, as you can see in this picture, are just a traveling group that is, trying to find some way to feed and house themselves in Mexico. And I think they're finding it difficult, to put it lightly. And it's causing big problems in Mexico. So people are not happy with that. So that does it for the news blitz. All the, bottom of the barrel articles, the boring stuff, we got out of the way. Now we're about to get into some real geopolitical, consequential news that is massive. This is massive, because I said it like a year and a half ago, and I can't find. I had a YouTube short, and it must have gotten taken down. But it was when the Nord Stream 2 pipeline was hit by America, that I said, oh my God, this could be the beginning of World War III. And I talked about everything that was going on. I'm not too sure what I said, but I called it out, okay? And there was the Ukraine Russia conflict. Israel was just starting to hit Gaza, China, Taiwan, the migrants coming into America. All these things were happening, and I'm thinking like, okay, America just got involved with fighting Russia, and it was our hand that did that, that cut off the gas pipeline to Germany from Russia, and that massively hurt Germany's economy. But I could see the signs that things were ramping up. Well, this is military on military conflict that we're looking at now, and if it wasn't apparent back then when I said that this could be the beginning of World War III, it should be more apparent now because of this right here. Uh, you'll see it in a second. NATO deploys armed fighter jets to intercept Russian military planes flying over the Baltic Sea. As we'll read in this article, the Baltic Sea is international territory. And you can do flyovers. It's a common thing that they do all the time. Well, NATO decided to fly up and take down some Russian aircraft that were doing scheduled military flyovers in international waters. This is a massive escalation beyond anything we've seen so far. This is literally Europe versus Russia 2.0. The main event, the big fight of the night. This is a show that nobody wants to see. You know, um, there's some attractiveness to watching people fight, in the octagon or in a boxing match or whatever. These world leaders seem to have that same drive, but as it relates to whole country conflicts with millions of soldiers fighting each other, and this escalation right here is simply that. It is ego. It is a sycophantic hate of Russia. It is warmongering against Russia on the part of Europe. It is all kinds of things. But this right here, this escalation, I'm going to read this article for you guys. But I want you to think about how massive it would be if Russia, China, Europe, America, if all these countries with all of their advanced weapons, this is not just ground troops and old school, good old fashioned artillery. This is literally uh, the potential to turn into thermonuclear war on a global scale. And let's get into the article here because I'm having trouble even finding words to describe this. So, NATO intercepted Russian strategic bombers and fighter jets that flew over the Baltic Sea on Monday, a muscular display of air power on the alliance's eastern flank, away from the spotlight of the Middle East, on the Middle East. French Rafale fighters were deployed from a Lithuanian airbase where they are stationed as part of a decades-long NATO air policing effort. The fighters, armed with air-to-air missiles, joined jets from Sweden, Finland, Poland, Denmark, and Romania. They all took to the skies to inspect and keep watch on the Russian flight, the French detachment said. The Russian mission included two supersonic Tu-22M3s, as well as 10 fighters, both Su-30s and Su-35s, that took turns escorting the large strategic bombers, according to statements. The Russian Defense Ministry said the long-range bombers flight was scheduled and occurred in airspace over the neutral waters of the Baltic Sea. The flight took more than 4 hours, the ministry said Monday on Telegram. At certain stages of the route, the long-range bombers were accompanied by fighters of foreign states, the ministry said. Crews of long-range aviation regularly conducted flights over the neutral waters of the Arctic, the North Atlantic, the Pacific Ocean, as well as the Baltic and Black Seas. All flights of Russian Aerospace Forces aircraft are carried out in strict compliance with international rules for the use of airspace. The ministry did not immediately respond to requests for comment on Tuesday. It often reports flights by its strategic bombers over the Baltic Sea, including in January when NATO jets also flew up to meet them, and at least 4 times last year. So, 4 times in the last year, NATO has taken a regularly scheduled routine flyover of neutral waters and done threatening maneuvers towards Russian aircraft, to which Russian aircraft did not respond with force. So who's the aggressor here? Obviously, NATO. The military alliance routinely scrambles fighter aircraft to intercept Russian warplanes that approach or fly near NATO airspace. NATO says the Russian planes it intercepts often fail to use their transponders and don't communicate with air traffic controllers or file a flight plan. NATO jets are set up to identify them. Identify them, yes. Shoot them down, no. It's international neutral ground. Many of Russia's flights that NATO monitors with its Baltic air policing mission in place since Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia joined the alliance in 2004 are to and from the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad. Even before the war in Ukraine, NATO was intercepting Russian planes around 300 times each year, mostly over waters around Northern Europe. So, 300 times a year, you're shooting down airplanes in neutral territory. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this. What I do know is that NATO has been the aggressor towards Russia. NATO influenced the Ukraine war to go the way that it did. And just a quick breakdown, because I don't even have time to really get into it. Essentially, Ukraine voted in 2014 a pro-Russia leader. NATO said that their election was fraudulent. Then they poured funding and influence into the Ukrainian election, and out on the other side pops a leader that is pro-NATO. So that's Vladimir Zelensky. So this happened. Ukraine cracked down on Russian influence. 2 areas of Ukraine seceded from Ukraine and wanted to be part of Russia. The Ukrainian military was going in there and cracking down on Ukrainian citizens and forcing them to do things that went against their Russian heritage, which Russian was their native language. The area used to be Russia. The area is the birthplace of the country Russia. And some of those people have a loyalty to Russia. Ukraine came to enforce loyalty to Ukraine. And Russia saw this and said, we have to go in and bail these people out and bail them out in accordance with a treaty that had been signed when the USSR broke up. So the Ukraine war was directly a result of NATO's interference with that election. Now, I want to show you a video, and this video I've played before. I think I played it on the Citizens Report. I don't know if I've played it on this channel, but essentially, what I'm gonna do here is I want you guys to see this video, and you can see right here, January of 1949. Let me get this full screen for you. There we go. Okay, January of 1949, NATO alliance was formed. And you can see here, blue is the NATO members, lighter blue shows partial partnership or connection to NATO, red is the USSR, light red is Russia. And you can see right now, look here, at all the Baltic states are all part of the USSR. Here's Russia, and NATO has not been formed yet, okay? So NATO's formed. You got Iceland, UK, Norway, France, Portugal, Italy. Okay, and hold on, we gotta wait till we get there. 1951. 1952, Turkey joined. Germany. Oh. 1976. 82. So it's all been NATO expansion so far. Alright, there it is. We could pause it here because I want to show you guys. Alright, so all the Baltic states. Now you can see this little red part here. That's Kaliningrad. And that is still Russian today, that little territory. So all of the expansion so far has been on NATO's part. NATO expanded eastward towards Russia. Okay, now the USSR broke up and gave up the Baltic states. And right here, what we're supposed to have, there was an agreement signed when the USSR broke up, that what you're seeing here, NATO's over here, Russia's over there, and these areas between that are still white are meant to be a buffer zone between NATO and Russia. And there was a treaty signed that NATO would not expand any more eastward. These areas would be left as a buffer zone, and Russia would not expand westward, and that, that's how they would have peace. So let's see if who stuck to that agreement here. The whole thing got taken up by NATO. The entire area. Oops. The entire area was taken over by NATO, and NATO has been the aggressor throughout the entire conflict. That's my position on it. We could see Russia's doing a routine flyover over neutral territory, and NATO strikes the Russian aircraft, which apparently, according to that article, they do all the time. Okay. Switching gears, we're going to pivot into the Southern Poverty Law Center, who is being indicted right now for what people are amounting to fraud, but in reality, it's much, much worse than that. So, Poverty Law Center, and just fix this real quick. Southern Poverty Law Center indicted on charges that it fraudulently paid informants in extremist groups. Paid informants in extremist groups. In a minute, I am going to blow this headline out of the water. I'm going to prove this headline to be intentionally deceptive and to be spun in such a way that it provides an out for the SPLC of their guilt in this when the indictment clearly states otherwise. But let's read what they said. The head of the civil rights organization said the group was outraged by the false allegations leveled against it. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche on Tuesday announced an indictment against the Southern Poverty Law Center, alleging the civil rights organization has engaged in financial crimes. Blanche said at a news conference that the Justice Department's investigation found the organization had been manufacturing the extremism it purports to oppose by paying sources to stoke racial hatred and then hiding those payments. For financial crimes, they should be charged with terrorism because what they were doing was funding white supremacist groups, massive white supremacist groups, and you can read the indictment yourself. They were funding massive white supremacist groups and not funding what does it say? What does that say? It says informants, not funding informants. They were funding the leaders of the group, and you know, carrying on hate groups and hate crimes and all sorts of things and paying for it so that they could stay in business. Because the Southern Poverty Law Center, if there's no domestic terrorism threat, if there's no hate group to hate them, if there's no threat in general, then there's no money coming in from donors and there's no fear from the public to think, oh my God, I better, donate to the SPLC so they could look at, make sure my civil rights are protected. Well, they're not only not protecting your civil rights, they are funding people to go out and carry out terrorism against you in the name of white supremacy and then, claiming victimhood when they are the ones that funded it. And I'm going to pull up the indictment here. Oops. I'm going to pull up the indictment here and show you guys the language in the indictment that specifically says that the Southern Poverty Law Center funded the leaders of white supremacist groups. So this is supposed to be a group that looks out for people's civil rights and historically is known for advocating for African Americans. And, a lot of people trust the SPLC. And a lot of people I know, have probably donated to it. And so here's the indictment. Now, this is just an allegation, obviously, because there hasn't been a ruling on the case so far, and everyone has their chance to have their day in court and prove their innocence. But this has been predicted for years that they were involved in this type of stuff. And this is the indictment right here. So the first paragraph, the Southern Poverty Law Center's SPLC stated mission included the dismantling of white supremacy and confronting hate across the country. However, unbeknownst to donors, some of their donated money was being used to fund the leaders and organizers of racial groups, including the Ku Klux Klan, the Aryan Nation, the National Alliance, and the National Alliance. The SPLC's paid informants, field sources, engaging in the active promotion of racist groups at the same time that the SPLC was denouncing the same groups on its website. The SPLC also had a field source who was a member of the online leadership chat group that planned the 2017 Unite the Right event in Charlottesville, Virginia. That was the thing that they said when Trump said there's great people on both sides, meaning the left and the right. And then he specifically, after that, said, but not the KKK. Those people are disgusting. You know, the white supremacists that showed up to this protest in Charlottesville, not those people, but just your normal right wing and left winger that were peaceful today. Those people, there was great people on both sides. This was a massive thing that they used against Trump. And the SPLC specifically harped on it over and over again that this was a problem. Nazis were supporting Trump. Look at their tiki torches. They're out here, burning tiki torches as a way to threaten us and show that they want to be white supremacists. All this stuff. So this was used to drag Donald Trump's name through the mud. And basically, the SPLC, it says, had a field source who was a member of the online leadership chat group that planned the 2017 Unite the Right event in Charlottesville, Virginia. The field source made racist postings under the supervision of the SPLC and helped coordinate transportation to the event for several attendees. In order to covertly pay for its field sources, the SPLC opened bank accounts connected to a series of fictitious entities. So they had an umbrella corporation that was designed to help spread out and hide the money that they were paying to basically people, agitators in the crowd that were trying to make it more racist and more hateful than it actually would have been organically, and essentially creating uh, manufacturing the entire smear on Trump because he slipped up or he didn't even slip up. They just took out of context a 5-second clip of him saying, "There's great people on both sides." And they said, "Oh my God, what he meant was there's great people on the left and great people in the Nazi group." What he meant, and they never played the next 5 seconds where he said, "But not the KKK, they're bad people." And I'm just paraphrasing what he said, but so this indictment goes on, and there's more examples of the SPLC, but essentially, yeah, if you donated to the SPLC thinking that they were trying to stop white supremacy, they actually funded white supremacy with your money. So you should probably sue them. I think that that's only right. It's a right thing to do. Okay, now I want to talk about Alex Jones. I want to talk about Alex Jones and his ongoing uh defamation lawsuit and his, um, you know, his judgment, his $1.4 billion judgment for defamation, and uh, the state receiver being in control of his company, and essentially him being shut down. And now the Onion is literally like you see here, this deer head on the wall. They are literally mounting InfoWars and Alex Jones head on the wall as a trophy, thinking and saying that they got InfoWars, they took it over already, and they did not take it over. The Onion does not control InfoWars, and I think it's just illegal that they're even, claiming that they own InfoWars, and they're selling products with InfoWars logo on it. And Alex Jones really did get screwed because essentially he talked about Sandy Hook, and let's just say someone was online talking about it. Well, he would say, "Hey, play that video." He'd play the video, and then he'd say, "That is kind of weird. What this guy was saying is that X, Y, and Z. I think that should be looked into." So he wanted to question Sandy Hook. He wasn't the Sandy Hook guy. He just talked about it a little bit. Okay, so before he was ever sued, he had already come out and said, "Actually, I think I was wrong. I think Sandy Hook happened. I apologize to the parents for questioning it. Uh, I think it did happen, and I'm against what I said before." He publicly said this, that he didn't believe it anymore. Okay, so as far as defamation goes, if you correct the statement before they sue you, it's not defamation anymore. And I think he just got screwed over. And essentially, what happened was he didn't even get proven guilty of defamation. What happened was he went to court, and, when they were doing the process of turning in evidence before there was ever a jury, the court asked, "Hey, when you did your marketing of Sandy Hook, when you, did your marketing meetings, and your marketing department said, 'Hey, talk about Sandy Hook because that makes us this much money. Here's the paperwork,' right?" They said, "Give us that paperwork." And InfoWars, Alex Jones, Free Speech Systems said, "We don't have that paperwork. We don't have a marketing department that tells us what to say so that we make more money. We just say whatever we want. We say whatever we think is true." So they didn't provide this non-existent paper, and it never was discovered by the court. Even though they went through all of his documents, they never discovered this paper. He never provided it. Boom. Here. This is the one instance I could actually use this. The judge went, boom, guilty. You're guilty automatically because you didn't provide us this paper that we can't prove exists, but we say that you need to give it to us. So therefore, you're guilty. So when Alex Jones went in front of a jury, the jury wasn't deciding if he was guilty or not. The judge had already declared him guilty. He faulted him as guilty, and then the jury was just there to decide how guilty he was, how much money he owed. And I guess they came up with $1.4 billion. $1.4 billion for questioning something. Now, all the mainstream media literally told the public that there was weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East. That's why we went to war over in the Middle East after 9/11. But they don't owe any money, but Alex Jones does because he's, right wing, far right conspiracy theorist or whatever. It was a beta test. It was to see who they could silence, who the government could silence. And it only all came about 1 week after Donald Trump was elected. Now all of a sudden there's articles coming out. They're tying Alex Jones to Sandy Hook and Trump to Alex Jones as a way to, drag down Trump's popularity. And okay, so all that being said, you could tell that I'm kind of, well versed in what's going on with this case. Rachel Maddow does not know a thing about what's going on with this case. And I want to play this clip of her talking about the Onion taking over InfoWars. And I'm going to pause it and just, break down everything that she's lying about. So, get this up on the screen here. Put it full screen. Okay, so here it is.
In the vast, weird, really right-wing media universe in the United States of America, there's a special and unique place held by an outlet called InfoWars, and its manic host, Alex Jones. Alex Jones, for decades, has peddled Baroque conspiracy theories alongside a really scammy trade in survivalist merchandise and hilarious supplements that promise lots of things I cannot even say or describe on basic cable. InfoWars isn't just one more thing in the weird right-wing media.
She said supplements that do things I can't even describe on the media. What are you talking about? Fish oil? Vitamins? Sea moss? Turmeric? These are all everyday supplements that people take all the time. But continuing.
World, for all its ridiculousness, InfoWars has left a real-world trail that is not just toxic, I would argue it is evil. Specifically when it comes to Alex Jones's signature conspiracy theory, that the 2012
signature conspiracy theory. His signature conspiracy theory, as if it's one of the main things that he talked about. It wasn't one of the main things that he talked about. It's one of the main things that you talk about when talking about him. But he barely covered it. He does a 3-hour show every day, and I think that they had 20 minutes of evidence of him talking about it total over years of him doing a 3-hour show every day. So it wasn't his signature conspiracy theory. It's your signature way to drag his name through the mud.
Massacre of school kids at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut didn't really happen. That it was a hoax, and the kids who were all killed there are still alive, or they never existed in the first place. It's insanity and unbelievably cruel. As Alex Jones repeatedly pushed that insanity on InfoWars, some of his fans subjected the grieving families in Sandy Hook to years of online abuse and harassment and death threats. Years into it, in 2018, several Sandy Hook families sued Alex Jones for defamation. Juries found him liable. The families were ultimately awarded about $1.5 billion. But the families have never...
Juries did not find him liable. The judge in the case found him liable, and the jury decided on $1.4 billion based on financial information that the court was able to argue that Alex Jones had all this money, and Alex Jones had a gag order that he wasn't allowed to dispute the experts who said that he had all this money that he didn't have. Actually, it came out in the court case that he had meager assets and that he had overpaid on his taxes, and he wasn't hiding all this money. And this is something that's easily provable. This is something that's easily provable because all these financial records are disclosed in the court filings. So you can go prove that yourself. You could literally prove that with a 5-minute Google search. You could prove that that is not the case. He didn't have massive amounts of money, and if anything, he was found to have meager assets by the court.
Received a penny of that because Alex Jones declared bankruptcy after the verdict. A bankruptcy judge.
They said the families never received a penny of the money. Alex Jones has been paying money the whole time. They literally have a state receiver in charge of the company's financials to make sure that the families get a portion of the money. The company still has to operate, and they still have to pay the crew members and the salaries of the employees, but they don't just not pay the bill. There's literally a state receiver in place to make sure that they get money, and Alex Jones sold off a bunch of his assets that they already received the money for, and they're still attacking him. They're trying to take the business. They want to sell off all the equipment. They want to sell off the name. They actually wanted to own Alex Jones's name and likeness. They literally wanted to own Alex Jones, to which he had to file with the court that it violated the 13th Amendment against slavery. And that's what the court used to decide that the families couldn't own Alex Jones's likeness and person, which is literally ridiculous. So she continues to lie here, and I will continue to break it down for you. Put this back up for a second.
Ordered that all of InfoWars' assets, including intellectual property, the InfoWars brand itself, needed to be sold off to help Alex Jones satisfy those debts to the families. Well, you may remember about a year and a half ago, we learned that the surprise winner of an auction of InfoWars assets was the satirical news site The Onion.
No, it wasn't. It says satirical news site The Onion buys Alex Jones at InfoWars. This was November 14th, 2024. Guess what? InfoWars is still running and operating. That's my birthday, November 14th. And on November 14th, InfoWars shut down. I specifically remember it. They shut down, and the website was down for a day. And then the court stepped in, and then it went back up, and Alex Jones still had ownership. So what she's saying here is a complete lie. They didn't win InfoWars in an auction. There was no auction. The auction was found to be rigged against all the other buyers because the court wanted to give the company to The Onion, and The Onion didn't give the biggest bid, but they were found to have won the auction because it was all agreed upon behind closed doors between the court and The Onion. So it was a rigged auction that got turned over by the court and literally didn't even go through. So The Onion did not win InfoWars in 2024 like Rachel Maddow is saying that they did.
Which Alex Jones and InfoWars would, of course, be a delicious punchline. The Onion would turn InfoWars into a parody of itself. stop it from doing more harm, start maybe repairing some of the harm that it's done. You might also remember, though, that almost as soon as The Onion got a hold of InfoWars, they lost it again. Alex Jones challenged the auction. It's been tied up in court ever since. But then today, a breakthrough. This is the front page of The Onion tonight. Look, The Onion, info.
The Onion is using InfoWars logo and actually selling InfoWars merchandise, but does not own the company. This is not only copyright infringement, but it's literally wearing the skin of InfoWars in some sycophantic obsession of owning InfoWars, and it's The Onion, but The Onion is being funded by Bloomberg. So it's Bloomberg through The Onion wearing the skin of InfoWars, because I think that they're obsessed with InfoWars. I think they want to be InfoWars, and I think that they want to take it over so that they can try to be InfoWars, and they will never live up to that.
InfoWars. You can see the top story in the upper left there. At long last, InfoWars is ours. You see the InfoWars logo with the onion for the O in info on the upper right-hand side of the screen. The Onion today announced.
Okay. Oops. Okay, so that's enough of that. I played that for you guys because obviously, InfoWars is a journalist outlet, just like I am. They're a little bigger than I am, but they are a First Amendment protected journalism outlet, and they have a right to free speech, and they have a right to question things, and this is their rights being trampled on. And essentially, if their rights are allowed to be trampled on, my rights are allowed to be trampled on. Therefore, I wanted to do this breakdown to stick up for InfoWars, because they don't deserve to be liable for $1.4 billion for questioning something that, in my opinion, had decent reason to be questioned, with some of the things that came out in the police reports and all that. Not that I'm not like an expert on it, so I really can't say one way or the other, but everything should be questioned. You should be allowed to question everything and try and the government shouldn't give you a story and say, here it is, deal with it. Hey, here's dinner, eat what's on your plate. They should satisfy whatever questions you have and be transparent to the fullest extent and allow you to speak and question so that there's clarity about everything. That's why the First Amendment is so important. And that's why it's important to me to stand up for InfoWars and show you guys what's going on with that. Okay, so next I want to show you, I'm going to get into Ilhan Omar. And there's been two investigative journalists that have both separately done video reports on Ilhan Omar and her
has there ever been a
fraud schemes that she's been involved in. And so I'm going to play you this clip first. This is Angela Rose, and she went to a site that was supposedly some kind of government-funded business, and it turns out that there's no government-funded, I forget what it was, there's no government-funded business, and it's actually a restaurant, and when she went inside, no one had ever heard of that business operating. and she can do a better job of explaining it than I can. So let's go to this video here.
Can I ask you just one question real quick? Ever been a substance abuse clinic that operates out of here?
We are in Minneapolis to continue to expose Ilhan Omar because they once claimed that they were worth $6 million to $30 million. But now she says that that is an accounting error and they're actually worth around $18,000 to $95,000. And she blames all of this on not being involved in her husband's businesses. But what she is involved with is this building right behind me. You can see that it says Sagel Restaurant, and I actually noticed that they have changed their sign, but on the side of the building, it has their old original sign. And you'll notice something interesting, that they have the number of the building blocked off.
The address of this place is very important. This is where it pulls up online that they operate out of, but on their old sign, it says they operated out of 411 Cedar Avenue, but now they are at 326, where there is Sahal service that comes up on Google. This is not normal behavior at all, since before all of this insanity, from 1983 up until 2020, one singular restaurant operated out of the entire building, out of the entire 326 address. Up until then, this building promoted its restaurant. Look at this guy looking through the window. Up until 2022, when they begin to have some type of BLM thing and other political posters, that's when everything gets so out of hand. You guys are not going to believe the things in this video.
326 Cedar Avenue. And that is where we are right now. So this is 326. Ilhan Omar was trying to pass $1.46 million of taxpayers' money to Generation Hope, which is a substance abuse clinic, drug addiction place that was supposed to be operating here, but people found out that it is a restaurant.
It's the exact address where we are that she listed to receive $1.46 million.
And as you'll see, there are other things that operate out of here, like a Sahal service.
Pause. Let's talk about Sahal services for a second and why the manager's address brings us to a mosque or another community center.
Okay, so obviously Ilhan Omar is allowing $1.4 million to go to a place that doesn't operate properly, and that's not directly tied to her finances, but it is fraud that she's allowing to happen under her nose. Now, if she's getting a little cut of the money or not, that's up for debate, and that's not even being argued here. I don't think, but I encourage everyone to watch that full video. It's important to know what's going on with your tax money. Now, I'm going to play this video, and this video was done by Nick Sortor, and this is in direct correlation with Ilhan Omar's finances. This is actually related to her personal finances, and Nick Sortor is exposing that she basically she basically shut down a fraudulent winery that she was invested in or that she owned. And, just days before, she was supposed to be on trial for this, essentially. So I'm going to play the video and let Nick Sortor explain it for you.
Hi, Congresswoman Omar. You were just talking about how Trump's economy has failed the American people, but I think the American people really want to know how you went from a negative 65,000 before coming into Congress to over $30 million in just 7 years.
My disclosure is public now.
Yeah, it is. And so a lot of people now are looking into that and finding S. Crew Winery, a winery that doesn't actually seem to exist. Is that a real winery, or?
Do you all actually look at and read things, or do you just ask silly questions?
Well, it's listed in the financial disclosure. So can you explain it? Because we have a lot of questions about it and things just aren't adding up. There's no real phone number. There's no real location.
Why did you want to buy some wine?
Probably not from you, to be honest. Recently stated that the American people should be afraid of the white man. They should be fearful of the white man.
I never said that.
Yeah, you're on video saying it.
Our country should be more fearful of white men across our country, because they are actually causing most of the deaths within this country. No, I did not.
Yes, you.
So Ilhan Omar shut down this winery. She, says that basically they shut it down ahead of a hearing that's coming up about her financial disclosures. So she's trying to get out ahead of this and, basically avoid any liability for whatever fraud and maybe, money laundering or whatever she was involved in. She's trying to get out ahead of it. She has shut down this business and is trying to disconnect herself from it. And then the last thing I'm going to show you guys here is, just because we always got to be thinking about the future and where this country's going. This is Ted Cruz, and he's basically predicting that Chuck Schumer will shut down the government weeks before the midterms. So this is a strategy that has been used by Chuck Schumer multiple times recently, not to mention, years and years past. But Ted Cruz said Tuesday that Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer would shut down the government shortly before this year's midterms. On September 30th, funding for the federal government will end. Chuck Schumer is not a creative guy. He's not hard to predict. Last year, right before the election, what did Schumer do? He shut down the whole government, and the Democrats believe that the shutdown helped them politically, and it benefited them in New Jersey and Virginia. Cruz said on CNBC's Squawk Box, referencing a shutdown surrounding healthcare issues that lasted more than a month. I will wager right now $100 that Schumer intends on October 1st to do the same thing, to shut down the whole federal government for a month, so that on election day the government is shut down. You have 4-hour lines again in the airport, and Democrats can say, see, the Republicans are in charge. They don't know what they're doing. And I think this is a smart take from Ted Cruz, that, that's a potential thing that could happen. But I mean, there's so much more. They're not even passing the SAVE Act. So to be worried about this and to be talking about this is irrelevant. It rings hollow with a lot of people that support the Republican Party, support the things that the Republican Party holds as their values, that Ted Cruz is ignoring. But he wants to fearmonger about this, but he doesn't want to actually handle the problem, pass the SAVE Act, end the filibuster, do all these things that the American people are looking for him to do. So it's pretty sad what's going on. Our country, like I said at the beginning of the show, is heading towards hard times, and it's not just America, it's the whole world, because of the shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz, the potential shutdown of the Suez Canal, and all these different layers upon layers upon layers of conflict and tension and brinksmanship that have brought us to the edge of a massive, massive global conflict. So knowing this is being ahead of this. If you can go and buy some food, water, whatever you can to be stocked up, so that you can protect yourself and your family into the future, it's very important to do so. Actually, Oh, this right here is an example of one way you could be prepared. And it's not an endorsement of this of Cabela's or anything. I bought these last year, but basically, what we got here: apple cinnamon oatmeal, maple brown sugar oatmeal, creamy pasta and vegetables, Southwest rice with beans, and hearty tortilla soup. So this doesn't look super appetizing, doesn't look delicious or anything like that, but this will get you through those hard times. And this is supposed to be 3 entrees and 2 breakfasts. So this is not that much food, but you can stock up on these things. Buy one once a week. Of whatever brand. I've heard of Ready Hour and My Patriot Supply. This one's Cabela's. Whatever company you find a good deal with or think that their food. I know the Health Ranger store or Mike Adams, naturalnews.com. I know that they sell lab tested, organic, all kinds of storable food that you can keep and will keep you full of nutrients and healthy. Well, maybe there's shortages at the grocery stores. Maybe there's not. Maybe you buy these for no reason and whatever. But they last 25 years. Some of them last even longer. They're like pretty rat proof, pretty rodent proof. And you can buy these, and let's just say you spend $600 and nothing ever happens. This is insurance. You pay car insurance every month to insure your car, and if you don't get in an accident once in your life, then you paid it for no reason, but you had car insurance. So if something happened, you could get a new car or get your medical bills covered, things like that. And some people never use their car insurance. This is also insurance, and maybe you never use it, maybe you do, but it's good to be prepared and good to think ahead. We have all these problems going on, and you don't want to be one of those people who's scrambling after everything's gone off the shelves in the stores. Now you're scrambling and fighting for food rather than being prepared ahead of time. So I think that's all we have for you today. If you liked what I said, if you liked our content, if you thought that this was educational and helpful, please hit the like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Get this information out there to as many people as you can. And just be the change that you want to see in the world. Be the change. Do something. Start your own podcast. Start a little flag waving group, or go out and hold signs. Go out. This is my thought right now. Go out and hold a sign that says "No nukes, end the war." You know what I mean? Something simple like that. A big sign that people can read when they're driving by. Stand on a public sidewalk. Do everything according to the law. But that would be what I would stand up for right now. No nuclear war. And I'll leave you with that. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a great night.